Hi, everyone. Shana Tova. So let's be honest. Everyone wants smart kids. Best advice, I didn't know this when I was raising my kids, but best advice, according to psychologist Michael Lewis, notice how often they lie. Toddlers who lie about peeking at a toy when they're told not to have higher verbal IQs than those who don't. Research has shown that children who lie earlier in life have better executive functioning skills, as well as a heightened ability to see the world through other people's eyes. Sounds like lying might actually be beneficial. Who knows, the more lies, the more likely your kid's about to get into Harvard. We also lie because it works, until, of course, it doesn't. We lie to get out of trouble and evade personal responsibility, for personal gain, to cover a failing, to impress or protect someone, or to be polite. Unfortunately, when we lie, we often dig ourselves into a hole of more lies, because in the end, our desire to lie is directly tied to our desire to control how other people see us, to protect whatever advantage we gain from appearing to be better than who we really are. This makes truth-telling a complicated subject. We live in a culture where lying has become a way of life. When truth is called into question by those who claim that any negative news is fake news, or when politicians actually go on record saying that truth isn't truth, and that facts are in the eyes of the beholder, what's a lie and what's a truth has blurred. And yet we teach our children that truth-telling is important. Why do we believe that honesty is a moral imperative? Why do tales like The Boy Who Cried Wolf and Pinocchio speak to the dangers of dishonesty when it's actually useful? Essentially, why does the third commandment, "You shall not swear falsely," exist? Because we know that if truth is thrown out the window, trust is broken. And when trust is eroded, we don't know what's up and what's down, whether we're safe and when we're endangered. Essentially, without truth, our entire democratic system of rights and representation is called into question. And yet, we come from a long tradition of people who evaded the truth. Think of just who lied in the book of Genesis, just Genesis. Adam and Eve lied to God when they didn't admit to eating the forbidden fruit. Sarah lied to God when she said she wasn't laughing after overhearing that she would be pregnant at an old age. Laban lied and gave Jacob Leah to marry instead of Rachel. Tamar dresses up as a harlot and deceives her father-in-law, Yehuda, into sleeping with her. And Joseph deceives all of his brothers up until almost the very end of the story. And I could go on, but I'll spare you. In fact, our ancient rabbis actually support lying under certain circumstances. Here's 3 examples. First, Rabbi Ilya, in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, posits, it's permitted for a person to lie in order to bring peace. And Rabbi Nathan goes further and even says it's a mitzvah. Imagine the limb that the rabbis went out on to say such a thing. You can lie in order to bring peace between two people. Second, the house of Hillel says that you should always praise a bride for her beauty. And the house of Shammai says, well, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe she's not so beautiful. And that would be a lie. To which Hillel says, well, come on, be nice. All brides are beautiful. In other words, forget about the truth. It's more important to be generous of heart. And third, Rabbi Yehuda shockingly rules that there are 3 instances when rabbis can deceive from the truth, can deviate from the truth. It's true that straying from the truth is not the same as flat out lying, but they are related. So one such instance when a rabbi can deviate from the truth is when he's asked if he slept with someone. Rashi tries to rationalize this and says, well, this is really about modesty because rabbis shouldn't show off who they're sleeping with. I couldn't make this up. But in light of the 300 Pennsylvania priests who committed 1,000 sexual assaults over the past 70 years, this rationalization seems a bit problematic, to say the least. The historian Timothy Snyder, in his cautionary pamphlet on tyranny, writes, "To abandon facts is to abandon freedom. If nothing's true, then no one can criticize power because there's no basis upon which to do so." And then he chillingly observes, post-truth is pre-fascism. And frankly, it scares me to think that we live in a post-truth world, that anyone can twist facts and say what they want to say to further their own agenda. When we allow lies about immigrants and Muslims, women and the press, the judiciary, the intelligence, the FBI, when we allow those to stand, or any group or institution that we find threatening or useful as a scapegoat, we engage in tricking and changing reality for our own purpose. This assault on truth normalizes lying. People begin to assume that it's okay to lie, that all knowledge is relative, and that there's no point in participating in the public exchange of ideas or fighting for values like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is why, even though I've argued that lying is pervasive and might even get your kid into college, our tradition still teaches that the pursuit of truth is essential. Exodus says, "Distance yourself from falsehood." Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel teaches the world stands on 3 things: judgment, truth, and peace. The rabbis of the Talmud preach that God hates 3 people, and one of them is the person who says one thing and does something else, or means something else with their heart. And Rabbi Yonah of Gorondi wrote in the Middle Ages, "It is forbidden to lie. It's even more serious than robbery." So what are we to do? How can we operate in a world where truth is complex, layered, depends on context, and that facts, by definition, can be understood differently on opposite sides of a ideological divide? How can we operate knowing that truth is essential for democracy, for moral living, and yet objective truth doesn't seem so easy to define? One of my favorite teachings in the Talmud is of Rabbi Hanina. He taught that the seal of God is the word truth. The word truth in Hebrew has 3 letters, emet. The first letter is aleph, the center letter is mem, and the last letter is taf. That's what makes up the word emet. And the first letter, aleph, is the first letter of the alphabet. Mem is the middle letter of the alphabet, and taf is the last letter of the alphabet. As if to teach that only God knows the beginning, middle, and end of a story, of our world, of our lives, of reality. We don't and can never see the whole picture. The only way to know the truth, the only way to own truth with a capital T, is to be God. To me, this teaching is all about humility. No one has a claim on truth because no one has eternal perspective. In a time and age where opposing political factions claim that we know what's right or we have the truth, a little humility is necessary. We waste time consumed with trying to argue over our individual truths when we're not the final judge of truth. And in the process, we justify not telling the truth, which is equally unacceptable. Humility is that bridge to recognize that our right doesn't mean that someone else is wrong, and the goal is to pursue truth, the acceptance that no one human is totally right, and that though there are facts that shouldn't be altered or denied, leaving our certainty open to self-doubt is healthy and honest. As the Christian theologian of the 20th century, Karl Paul Reinhold Niebuhr, was famous for saying, "Fanatic orthodoxy is never rooted in faith, but in doubt. It's when we're not sure that we're doubly sure." If to pursue truth means that we acknowledge that only God owns truth, let me remind you of a midrash you may remember about when God created us. So God was up in heaven with the angels, and they're arguing. The angels are arguing whether humanity should be created or not. And some said, yes, create humanity. And other angels said, no, don't create humanity. And then the virtue of loving kindness, of chesed, steps up to the mic. And he says, you have to create humanity, God, because humans are going to do acts of love. And then truth, Emet, steps forward. And Emet says, no, don't create humanity because humans are going to lie. So what does God do? God takes truth, throws truth down on the earth, and while the angels continue to fight, God creates humanity. Why did God throw truth down on earth and only then create us? Some say that God threw truth down so we could find truth easily, so it wouldn't be so elusive. Others argue that God threw truth down as if to say to us, you determine the truth. I, God, am no longer in charge of truth. And others teach that God threw truth back on earth as a message to the angels and to the humans. God wanted everyone to know that here on earth, truth is not absolute like it is in heaven. Truth can actually grow from imperfection, that the process of pursuing truth is what's important, not the singular reality of truth. That one can find truth in community, in conversation, in connection with others. That's why our tradition teaches that God's seal was truth, meaning that in order to dig ourselves out of our current culture of lying, we need to each stop worrying about what we look like in other people's eyes and worry about what we look like in God's eyes. And if you have a hard time with God, fill in ultimate goodness, the connecting force in the world, or a vision of what could be. A closing story about truth. Once there was a man named Rav Tavut who supposedly always told the truth. Rav Tavut married a woman who always told the truth, and they came from a village, she came from a village called Emet, called truth. They had 2 children. Nobody ever lied in this village, and no one died prematurely. One day, while his wife was in the bath, a neighbor came and knocked on the door, and he thought to himself, ooh, it's not really proper for me to say to the neighbor that my wife is naked right now. And the neighbor said, so where's your wife? And he said, oh, she's not home. The next day, both of his kids died. The village shows up at his door. What the heck happened? Nobody dies in the village of Emet. And he told them what happened. And they said, leave. I think the rabbis tell this story because truth isn't as simple as the people of the village of truth make it out to be. If we only spoke words of truth, we would all be sent out of this sanctuary, including me. Which is why the Psalms teach, when loving kindness and truth meet, then justice and peace kiss. May we spend this next year pursuing the meeting of loving kindness and truth. One needs the other. And in this age of fake news, when we're told the truth doesn't really mean the truth and facts are in the eyes of the beholder, we need both. We need loving kindness and truth. Shana Tova.